The front door creaked shut behind me, my keys jangling in the quiet. I'd gotten off work early, first time in months, and pictured Lauren's surprise when I walked in with takeout. Instead, the house was dark, empty. Her car wasn't in the driveway, though she'd texted me an hour ago. Stuck late at the office again. Don't wait up. I set the greasy paper bag on the counter, frowning. The silence gnawed at me. Then her phone buzzed on the couch. Forgotten, screen glowing. A message. Meet you at 7. Usual spot. No name. No context. My gut twisted. She didn't work past 5 on Thursdays. Never had. I paced the living room, replaying her excuses. 6 years married, and lately, she'd been a ghost, always working, always vague. I'd brushed it off as stress from her marketing job. But that text wasn't from a coworker. The usual spot wasn't her office. I grabbed her phone, hands trembling, and swiped. Password locked. Of course. I sank onto the couch, staring at the screen until it dimmed. Then I noticed her coat slung over the armrest. A crumpled receipt peeked out of the pocket, dated yesterday. Dinner for 2 at a place we'd never been. $60. Paid in cash. My chest tightened. I wasn't paranoid. I'd told myself that for months. But this was a crack in the facade. I could have called her, demanded answers. Instead, I sat there, piecing it together like one of those logic puzzles I used to obsess over as a kid. The kind where every clue fits if you look hard enough. Her late nights. Her evasiveness. Now this. Therefore, I made a choice. Next time she worked late, I'd follow her. See the truth for myself. Because if she was lying, and I was starting to think she was, I needed to know how deep it went. The takeout grew cold on the counter as I waited for her headlights to sweep the driveway, my mind already racing toward the next move. Lauren stumbled in at 10:37 p.m., heels clicking, her smile too bright. "You're still up?" she said, tossing her bag down. She smelled like lavender and something sharper, wine maybe. I nodded, keeping my voice steady. "Got off early. Thought I'd surprise you." Her eyes flicked to the takeout bag, then back to me. "Sweet of you," she chirped, but her fingers drummed the counter, a nervous tick I hadn't noticed before. She rambled about a client meeting, words spilling too fast, and I just watched. The receipt burned a hole in my pocket. We'd met in college, her bold, me quiet. She'd chased me, said my calm grounded her. 6 years later, that spark was ash. She'd grown distant, her laughter rarer, her phone always buzzing. I'd blamed her job, her stress. But now, sitting across from her as she avoided my gaze, I saw it. She wasn't tired. She was hiding. I asked about her day, casual, testing her. "Same old chaos," she said. "You know how it is." I didn't. Not anymore. That night, I barely slept. Her breathing steady beside me, but my mind churned. The text, the receipt, her lies stacking up like cards. By morning, I decided tailing her was the only way. She left for work at 8, kissing my cheek with a breezy "see you tonight." I waited 10 minutes, then grabbed my keys. Her office was 15 miles west. I drove past it. She wasn't there. Instead, I spotted her sedan turning north toward the suburbs. My pulse hammered as I followed, keeping 2 cars between us. She pulled into a cul-de-sac I'd never seen, parked outside a brick house with a manicured lawn. A man stepped out, tall, polished, not her boss. She hugged him, lingering, then disappeared inside. I gripped the wheel, breath shallow. This wasn't a meeting. This was something else. I could have stormed up, pounded the door. But I didn't. I needed more proof, not just a scene. Therefore, I drove home, the image of that hug searing my brain. Who was he? How long had this been going on? I wasn't ready to confront her yet. Not until I had every piece of this puzzle in place. I didn't sleep that night either. The man's face, sharp jaw, expensive coat, looped in my head. Lauren had come home at midnight, claiming a team dinner. I nodded, mute, letting her chatter fill the silence. She didn't notice my hands shaking. By dawn, I was on my laptop, searching. The house address was public record, 47 Willow Lane, owned by Daniel Hargrove, 38, real estate developer. A quick Google dive showed his face, same guy. LinkedIn had him connected to Lauren from years back before me. My stomach sank. This wasn't new. We'd built a life together, or so I thought. I was 34, a graphic designer, steady but not flashy. She'd always craved more, fancy dinners, trips we couldn't afford. I'd figured her late nights were ambition, not betrayal. But seeing her with him flipped the script. I scrolled his profile, multi-million-dollar deals, a penthouse downtown. Then I found an old photo, Lauren at some gala, arm around him, smiling like she used to with me. Caption: catching up with an old friend. 5 years ago. My throat tightened. Friends don't hug like that. I called in sick, too wired to work. Instead, I dug deeper. Property records showed Daniel bought the house 2 years back. Lauren's late nights started around then. Coincidence? Hardly. I cross-checked her social media, scrubbed clean, but her old posts gushed about reconnecting with people who matter. Cryptic. Then I remembered her coat. I rifled through it again, another receipt. Gas station, 30 miles out, dated last week. She'd said she was at yoga. The lies piled up, each one a jagged edge. Therefore, I confronted her that night. You were with Daniel today, I said, voice flat. She froze, mid-sip of wine, then laughed. Who? Oh, Dan. Client stuff, babe. You're overthinking. Her eyes darted away. Another tell. I pressed. At his house. She doubled down, spinning a tale about a project pitch, seamless as silk. I almost bought it, but her fingers drummed again, faster. She was good, too good. I backed off, nodding like I believed her. I didn't. Not anymore. Tomorrow, I'd tail her again. If she was this smooth, I needed hard evidence, something she couldn't talk her way out of. I shadowed her the next evening, a Friday. She'd said she was grabbing drinks with coworkers. Plausible, except her office was dead quiet when I drove by. Her car wove through traffic, me trailing, headlights off when I could manage. She pulled into Willow Lane again. Daniel greeted her at the door. No hug this time, just a quick glance around before ushering her in. I parked a block away, watching. A light flicked on upstairs. My chest burned, but I stayed put. Rushing in blind wouldn't get me answers. Back home, I found more cracks. Her laptop was locked, but a forgotten sticky note had her bank login scratched out. Risky, sure, but I was past caring. I logged in. Our joint account looked fine. Bills, groceries, normal stuff. Then I saw it. A second account, hers alone. 10 grand deposited last month. No source listed. My salary barely cleared that in 3. I scrolled back. Monthly deposits, same amount, 2 years running. My designs paid our rent, not this. Where was it coming from? Daniel's name nagged at me. His real estate empire screamed money, but why her? I dug into his company, Hargrove Properties. Public filings showed a marketing contract with Lauren's firm, 6 figures annually. Her cut? Unclear. But then I found a photo on some obscure blog. Lauren and Daniel at a charity event last year. She wore a necklace I didn't recognize, emeralds, gaudy, not my gift. He stood too close, hand on her waist. My jaw clenched. This wasn't business. Therefore, I called a buddy, Mike, ex-cop turned PI. Need a favor, I said, voice low. Discreet. Can you run a name? Mike didn't ask much, just took Daniel's details and promised a report. I hung up, staring at that photo. The necklace. The cash. Her lies. It clicked. She wasn't just cheating, she was profiting. But how deep did it go? I needed Mike's dirt before I moved. Lauren breezed and later, humming, oblivious. Good night. I asked casual. Great, she said, kissing my forehead. Her perfume was different, spicy, expensive. I smiled back, cold inside. Whatever she was hiding, I'd unravel it, piece by piece, starting with what Mike found tomorrow. Mike's call came at noon. Got something? He said, voice clipped. Meet me at the diner on 5th. I grabbed my jacket, nerves buzzing. Lauren was at the gym, her latest excuse, and I didn't bother checking. The diner smelled of burnt coffee and grease. Mike slid a folder across the table, thin but heavy with implication. Daniel Hargrove, he started, married once, divorced. No kids on record, but he's got a side piece, your wife. I swallowed hard, flipping it open. Photos. Lauren at Willow Lane, Daniel's arm around her. Time stamped over months. There's more, Mike said. Bank records, offshore account in her name. Deposits match his company's payouts. She's laundering, Ryan. Small scale but sloppy. My head spun. Laundering? Our life wasn't lavish. Modest house, used cars. Where was the money going? Then I saw it. A grainy shot of Lauren with a kid, maybe 4 outside that house. Dark hair like hers. My breath caught. Whose? I croaked. Mike shrugged. Not yours, I assume. Not mine. The words echoed, sharp as glass. I'd always wanted kids. She'd said, not yet, blame timing. But this? A secret child with him? I thanked Mike, paid him cash, and drove home, folder burning a hole in the passenger seat. Context shifted. Her late nights weren't just an affair. They were a double life. Therefore, I checked her bank again that night, risking her walking in. The offshore account linked to a trust named for Ellie, the kid. My hand shook as I traced it. $200,000 total, siphoned from my design gigs. She'd forged my signature on contracts, rerouted payments. Lauren got home at 8, all smiles. Jim was brutal, she said, stretching. I nodded, mute, watching her lie without flinching. She didn't know I knew. Not yet. But the kid, Ellie, changed everything. Was she hiding her to protect Daniel? Or me? I couldn't ask, not without tipping my hand. Instead, I started planning. If she could play this game, so could I. I'd use her own moves against her. Starting with that trust. Tomorrow, I'd dig deeper, find the proof to bury her. Or maybe build something bigger from the wreckage. I barely slept, Ellie's name looping in my head. A kid, hers, not mine, hidden while Lauren drained our life dry. By morning, I was at my desk, laptop glowing, chasing the trust. Public records were a dead end, but I found a legal filing buried in county archives. Ellie Marie Hargrove Trust. Daniel's last name. My stomach lurched. She wasn't just cheating, she'd built a family with him. I cross-checked dates. Ellie's birth year lined up with Lauren's solo trip to her mom's 4 years ago. A lie I'd swallowed whole. We'd been happy then, or I thought so. I just landed my first big design client, a startup that paid decently. Lauren had been distant, sure, but I'd blamed her job. Now it clicked. She'd been pregnant, plotting. But why hide it? Shame? Greed? I dug into our joint account again. Small withdrawals, cash, nothing flashy. Then I saw it. A $5,000 transfer to a preschool, disguised as consulting. Dated last month. She was funding Ellie with my money. My hands clenched the desk. She'd played me for years. That afternoon, I called Mike again. Need more, I said. The kid, Ellie. Anything. He grunted. Give me a day. I hung up, staring at Lauren's coat, still slung over the couch. I rifled it. No receipts this time, but a key fob I didn't recognize. Not our house, not her car. Willow Lane? My mind raced. Therefore, I grabbed it, drove to Daniel's place, and parked a street over. The key fit the side gate, smooth, silent. I slipped into the backyard, heart pounding. A tricycle sat by the porch. Ellie's. Proof she lived here. I could have stormed in, demanded answers. But I froze, hearing laughter, Lauren's than a child's. Through the window, I saw her scoop up a little girl, dark curls bouncing. Daniel joined them, smiling. A family. My family's thief. I backed off, pulse roaring. Confronting her now would tip my hand. I needed leverage, something to hit back harder than she'd ever expect. That night, I started sketching an idea, an app born from rage that could turn this mess into my escape. Lauren noticed my silence that week. You okay? She asked over breakfast, her tone too sweet. I nodded, forcing a smile. Just tired. She bought it, humming as she left for work. I wasn't tired. I was furious. Ellie's laugh, Daniel's smirk, the tricycle, they haunted me. But rage wasn't enough. I needed a plan. My design skills were sharp. I'd freelanced for years, built brand from scratch. Why not build something for myself? An app, puzzle-based, addictive. A distraction that could pay. I'd always loved puzzles as a kid, crosswords, riddles, anything with an answer to chase. Lauren used to tease me about it, said I overthought everything. Maybe she was right. But now, that habit was my edge. I mocked up a prototype, a game where users solved mysteries, unravels lies. Ironic, sure, but it flowed. By midnight, I had a rough build, clean, simple mind. Then Mike called. Ellie's his, he said. DNA test filed 2 years back. Lauren's on it. Mother listed. My grip tightened on the phone. Confirmed. There's more, he added. Daniel's company's shaky, over-leveraged. He's leaning on her cash flow. Her cash flow? Mine, he meant. I thanked him, hung up, and stared at my screen. The app wasn't just a distraction now. It was a weapon. Therefore, I poured everything into it. Days blurred, coding, testing, refining. Lauren barely noticed, too busy with her double life. Then she slipped up. Heading to a client dinner, she said one night, grabbing her bag. I check her phone's location later, Willow Lane. Again, I could have followed her, but I stayed put, tweaking the app. It launched quietly a week later, unraveled secrets. Downloads trickled in, 50, then 500. Word spread. By month's end, it hit 10K users, ad revenue ticking up. Lauren came home late that night, oblivious. Good day. I asked casual. Exhausting, she sighed, collapsing on the couch. I smiled cold. She didn't know I'd turned her betrayal into profit. But then my phone buzzed, a notification. Unraveled secrets had a bug. I fixed it, but the crash report showed an IP address I recognized. Hers. She downloaded it. Was she onto me? Or just curious? Either way, the game was on. The app's success hit fast. 50K downloads in 2 months, cash rolling in. I'd quit freelancing, funneling every dime into unraveled secrets. Lauren didn't blink, too wrapped up in her lies. But her playing it gnawed at me. Did she know? I checked the user data. Her account was active. High scores racked up. She was hooked, irony thick. I tweaked the next update with a level inspired by her. A cheating spouse hiding cash. Subtle but satisfying. Downloads climbed to 100K. I moved my earnings to a new account. She'd never touched this. Our marriage had been a shell for years. I'd loved her once, her laugh, her drive. Now I saw a stranger. She'd come home late, all smiles while I built my exit. But then Mike dropped a bomb. She's moving money again, he said. Big chunk, 50K, into that trust. Your name's still on the paper trail. My blood ran cold. She was forging me into her scam deeper than I'd thought. I pulled bank records, my signature looped and wrong, on transfers I'd never signed. Felony-level fraud. I confronted her that night. What's Ellie's trust? I asked, voice steady. Her fork froze midair, eyes wide. What? She stammered. Ellie who? I slid the bank statement across the table, highlighted undeniable. She laughed shrill. That's a mix-up, babe. Old client thing. Her fingers drummed the table, frantic. I leaned in. Stop lying. She doubled down, tears welling, Oscar-worthy. You're paranoid, Ryan. I walked away, leaving her sobbing. She was good, but I was done buying it. Therefore, I lawyered up. Quietly. A friend recommended Claire, a pit bull divorce attorney. She pored over Mike's files, my records. She's sloppy, Claire said. We've got her on fraud, maybe embezzlement. But she'll fight dirty. I didn't care, let her try. The app hit 500K downloads that week, netting me 6 figures. I rented a studio downtown, crashing there most nights. Lauren texted, Where are you? We need to talk. I ignored her. She didn't deserve a heads up. But then Claire called. She's filing first divorce. Claims half your app. Says she supported you. My jaw tightened. Supported? She'd robbed me. Now she wanted my revenge, too. Lauren's divorce filing landed like a punch. Served to my old address, but Claire intercepted it. Irreconcilable differences, it read, plus a claim for half my app's profits. Emotional support during development, her lawyer argued. I laughed bitter. Support? She'd been siphoning my life while I coded through her lies. Claire smirked. She's got no proof, just greed. We'll bury her. I nodded, but doubt crept in. Lauren was slippery, always had been. If she smelled money, she'd claw for it. The app was my lifeline now. 1 million downloads, features in tech blogs, ad revenue soaring. I'd hired a small team, kept it lean. My studio became HQ, whiteboards, coffee stains, late nights. I'd always been steady, not ambitious. But betrayal lit a fire. Lauren had no idea what I'd built or how I'd protect it. Then Claire found gold. A contract Lauren had signed for me, rerouting design payments to her offshore account. Dated pre-app. This kills her claim, Claire said. She stole from you first. That night, I crashed on the studio couch, replaying our marriage. Her charm had hooked me, confident, sharp. I'd been the quiet one, content with small wins. Now I saw her game. Use me, bleed me dry, and move on. But she'd miscalculated. Therefore, I struck back. Claire filed a counterclaim. Fraud, forgery, emotional distress. We attached Mike's photos, bank records, the trust docs. Ellie's existence stayed out. Too messy for now. I wanted Lauren scrambling, not prepared. She called the next day, voice trembling. Ryan, what is this? You're suing me. I stayed calm. You filed first. She gasped, theatrical. I just want us to be fair. Fair? After years of lies? I hung up, pulse steady. The app hit 2 million downloads that week, $50K a day in revenue. She didn't know yet, but I'd frozen her access to our joint accounts. Then Claire texted, she's hired a shark. Claims you had assets. My stomach dropped. Had assets? I'd earned every cent post-betrayal. But Lauren was spinning her web again, and court loomed. I needed one more move, something she'd never see coming, something to end this for good. Court was 3 weeks out, and Lauren upped the ante. Her lawyer, a slick guy named Gregson, filed a motion alleging I'd concealed income from unraveled secrets. Claire laughed it off. They're fishing, she said. No proof. But I wasn't so sure. Lauren knew me, knew how to twist things. I caught her texting Daniel once, pre-divorce, whispering about his cut. Was he coaching her? The app was at 3 million downloads now, pulling 7 figures monthly. She smelled blood, and I was the prey. I'd changed since this started. Once, I'd avoid fights, let her steamroll me with charm. Not anymore. I worked late at the studio, refining the app, watching numbers climb. My team noticed, called me relentless. Good. I needed to be. Then Claire dug up a gem. Lauren's offshore account had a co-signer, Daniel, linked to his failing company. He's underwater, Claire said. She's propping him up with your money. My money. My rage flared anew. Therefore, I baited her. I accidentally emailed her an old app revenue report. 6 months back. Modest numbers. She bit. Gregson filed it as evidence, claiming I'd lowballed earnings. Claire grinned. They just handed us a trap. We submitted the real stats. Millions, all post-separation. Her claim crumbled. She'd based it on a lie. But then Mike called. She's desperate, he warned. Met Daniel last night. Talking lawsuits, maybe worse. Worse? My skin prickled. Was she unhinged enough to sabotage me? That night, the studio's power cut mid-update. I rushed downstairs. Generator kicked in, but the server room smelled like burnt plastic. A frayed cable, deliberate. No proof it was her, but I knew. She'd been here years ago when I'd freelanced from home. She remembered the layout. I tightened security, moved servers off-site. The app hit 4 million downloads the next day. Untouchable. Lauren texted, we should settle. I don't want this to get ugly. Ugly? She'd already torched our life. I didn't reply. Court was close, and I had one last card, Daniel's financials. If I could tie her fraud to his collapse, she'd lose everything. I just needed proof, and time was ticking. Court was a week away, and Lauren's moves grew erratic. Claire had Daniel's financials. Hargrove Properties was bleeding $10 million in debt. His payouts to Lauren's account weren't investments. They were lifelines. She'd funneled over $300,000 of my money to him, forged docs tying me to his mess. Claire grinned. This is our kill shot. I nodded, but unease lingered. Lauren wasn't cornered yet. She was dangerous. The app hit 5 million downloads, revenue spiking to $2 million a month. She'd claim all if I slipped. I'd become someone new through this, ruthless, focused. Once, I let her tears sway me. Now I saw a grifter. My studio buzzed with my team, the app's success a shield I'd forged from her betrayal. But then Mike called. She's meeting Gregson today. Caught her on a burner phone. Something about evidence. My pulse quickened. Evidence? She'd torched the studio cable. Would she fabricate more? Therefore, I checked my backups. Servers were safe, data encrypted. She'd get nothing. That night, Claire texted, she's claiming you assaulted her. Assault? I'd never touched her. My blood boiled. She'd staged something. Photos surfaced online hours later. Lauren with a bruised wrist, time-stamped last week. I've been at the studio, provable, but the optics stung. My team panicked, downloads dipped. Claire stayed calm. She's overplayed it. We got your alibi, cameras, witnesses. I exhaled, shaky. Therefore, I flipped the script. I leaked Daniel's financials to a tech blog, anonymous tip. Headlines exploded. Real estate mogul sinks, linked to fraud. Lauren's name stayed out, but she'd feel the heat. She called, hysterical. "You're ruining me," she screamed. "Call it off." I stayed silent, letting her unravel. "You owe me, Ryan." "Owe her." After Ellie, the lies, the theft, I hung up. The blog post went viral. Daniel's empire crumbled overnight. Court loomed, and I had her pinned. But doubt flickered. Would she drag me down with her? Her desperation was a wild card. I tightened my grip on the app, my lifeline, knowing the next move was hers, and it'd be ugly. The courtroom smelled of polished wood and stale coffee. Lauren sat across from me, poised, her bruised makeup faded but strategic. Gregson opened with a sob story. I'd abuse her, hid wealth, left her destitute. Claire dismantled it. Alibi footage, my team's testimony, the app's post-separation earnings. Lauren's eyes darted, fingers drumming. Then we dropped Daniel's financials. The judge's brow furrowed as Claire laid it out. Lauren's forgeries, the trust, $300,000 siphoned. Gregson objected, overruled. Her mask slipped, just for a second. I'd pictured this moment for months. Once I'd have pitted her, those big eyes, that trembling lip. Now I felt steel. The app had changed me. $50M in valuation, a team of 20, a life she'd never touch. But she wasn't done. Gregson pivoted. The app idea was hers, conceived during marriage. Lauren nodded, teary. I inspired him. Claire laughed outright, presenting my sketches, dated after I caught her at Willow Lane. The judge wasn't buying it. Then came Ellie. Claire hesitated, privacy laws, but I nodded. Use it. She submitted the DNA test, the trust docs. Gasps rippled. Lauren's face drained white. That's personal, she shrieked. The judge leaned in. You made it relevant, Mrs. Carter. Her fraud tied to Daniel's collapse sealed it. Therefore, the ruling came fast. Divorce granted, her claims denied, fraud charges pending. She lost everything, house, accounts, credibility. I walked out, $50 million richer, her sobs echoing behind me. But victory felt hollow. I drove to the studio, replaying her lies. Ellie's laugh, Daniel's smirk. The app hummed. 6 million downloads now, but a weight lingered. I'd won, sure, but at what cost? Lauren texted that night. You'll regret this. I deleted it, assuming it was bluster. She had nothing left. Daniel was bankrupt. Ellie in his ex's custody fight. I crashed on the couch, exhausted. Then my phone buzzed. A news alert. Hargrove Properties fraud case expands. New suspect. Not Lauren. Me. My signature. Forged again. On a loan doc from 2 years back. My stomach dropped. She planted it, one last trap. The win wasn't clean. She'd lost the battle, but this could still burn me down. The news hit like a freight train. My name, forged on a $500,000 loan tied to Daniel's sinking empire, splashed across headlines. I just won in court, but Lauren had buried a landmine. Claire called at dawn. It's fake, she said. We'll prove it. But it's messy. Feds are sniffing. Messy? My app was clean, my life rebuilt, and now this? I paced the studio, teams staring. Downloads held steady, 7 million, but investors balked. I'd gone from victim to suspect overnight. Lauren had planned this. She'd lost the divorce, her cash, her kid, but she'd kept one ace. That loan doc predated our split, buried in Daniel's files. I'd never signed it, but her forgery was flawless. My looping R, my slanted T. She'd learned me too well. But why now? Revenge? Or a plea deal with prosecutors? I called Mike. Digging her last moves, I said. He grunted. On it. I needed her endgame, fast. The studio became a war room. Claire pulled bank records, my tax filings, every scrap proving I'd never touched that money. The app's success was my shield. $50 million valuation, all post-betrayal. But the feds didn't care, optics did. Then Mike texted. She met a guy, lowlife, ex-con. Week before court. My skin prickled. A forger? Therefore, I traced the loan's origin. Hardrow Properties Shell Company, dissolved last year. The signature was scanned, not signed, digital manipulable. Claire grinned. We've got her. I testified that week, calm, factual. Showed my clean books, the app's timeline. The feds shifted focus. Lauren's offshore account, her ties to Daniel's fraud. She'd miscalculated. I wasn't the weak link. Her evidence unraveled. The ex-con flipped, admitting she'd paid him $20,000 to plant it. Charges piled. Forgery, perjury, conspiracy. She'd lost Ellie, Daniel, her freedom. I walked free, case dismissed. The app hit 8 million downloads, investors back on board. But a scar lingered. I'd built an empire, sure, but trust? That was ash. Lauren's final blow hadn't landed, but it left a mark. One I'd carry into whatever came next. Months passed, the dust settling slow. Lauren faced trial, fraud, forgery, the works. She'd plea bargained, named Daniel as the mastermind. He was broke, disgraced, fighting his own charges. Ellie was with his ex-wife now, a messy custody war I stayed out of. My app soared, 10 million downloads, $50 million in revenue, a staff of 30. I'd moved to a loft downtown, sleek and quiet, the studio a memory. I'd won, financially, legally, but the silence echoed. I'd rebuilt my life, yet something gnawed. I'd changed beyond recognition. Once I'd been soft, trusting, steady. Lauren's lies hardened me, turned me into a man who struck first. The app wasn't just profit, it was proof I could outlast her. But then came the call. Mike, gruff as ever. Daniel's out, bailed yesterday. Met Lauren at county lockup. My jaw tightened. Out? Already? I'd figured he'd rot longer. Therefore, I checked the news. His lawyer had pulled strings, assets unfrozen. He was clawing back. I could have ignored it, let them fade. But curiosity tugged. I drove past Willow Lane that night, lights off. The house was dark, sold months ago. Then I saw him, Daniel, alone, loading a truck. No Lauren. My gut twisted. Had she ditched him too? I followed, tailing him to a dive bar. He sat there, nursing a beer, a shell of the slick developer I'd envied. I didn't approach, just watched. He lost more than me, money, family, pride. Therefore, I drove home, a strange calm settling. Revenge wasn't mine. It was theirs, eating each other alive. The app's next update launched that week, a level about betrayal's cost. Users loved it. Revenue ticked higher. I leaned back in my loft, city lights sprawling below. Lauren's traps had failed. Daniel's empire was dust. I'd turned pain into power, but a question lingered. Was this enough? Success filled my bank, not my bones. Maybe that's what she'd taken, permanently. I shrugged it off, sipping coffee, ready for whatever puzzle came next. They'd lost. I hadn't. That was the win I'd hold on to. 2 years later, I was untouchable, $50M in the bank, the app a household name. I'd sold a stake to a tech giant, kept control, and moved to a penthouse with a view that stretched forever. Lauren was a ghost, paroled early, living low. Daniel's trial dragged on. He'd lost everything but his lawyer's bill. I'd check headlines sometimes, a habit, but they didn't sting anymore. My life was mine, built from scratch, no thanks to her. Then came a knock. I opened the door, coffee in hand. Lauren stood there, thinner, eyes hollow, clutching a folder. Ryan, she said, voice small. I need to talk. I froze, instinct screaming to slam it shut. But she looked broken, not scheming. 5 minutes, I said, stepping aside. She sat, nervous, laying out her pitch. The app's success was her inspiration. She wanted a cut, consulting fees, retroactive. I stared, then laughed sharp cold. You serious? She pressed on, desperate. I'll push you to this. Without me. I cut her off. You mean without your lies? Her folder had emails. Mine, old ones, twisted to fit her story. But I'd seen this play. Therefore, I flipped it. I've tracked you, I said, calm. Every job you've applied for? Blacklisted. My network's wide now. Her face crumpled. She didn't know I'd quietly tanked her prospects. Tech, marketing, all dead ends. Revenge, slow and silent. She stood, trembling. You're cruel. Cruel? After Ellie, the fraud, the forged loan? I opened the door. You're done, Lauren. She left, folders slipping to the floor. Useless. I shut it, locked it, and leaned against the frame. The city hummed below, my empire solid. She'd come for a last grab and found nothing. I'd turned her betrayal into millions, outplayed her at every turn. The twist? She'd never see it coming. Her own moves, mirrored back, had buried her. Thank you for tuning into my story. We appreciate every single one of you. We'd love to know what part of the world you're watching from right now. Let us know in the comments.